What if I told you that an orphan girl became a queen and saved an entire nation from destruction? A deadly plot, a powerful king, and one woman whose courage changed history forever. In the heart of the Persian Empire, where kings ruled with absolute power and where life and death were decided by a mere gesture, one woman would rise from obscurity to change the course of history. She had no royal blood, no great wealth, and no political power. And yet, she was chosen. Not by chance, not by luck, but by divine purpose. This is the story of Esther, the woman who risked everything to save her people. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any incredible Bible stories. Let's start. King Xerxes, ruler of the vast Persian Empire, was a man of unmatched authority. His word shaped the destiny of nations, and yet, even in his court, defiance was not unheard of. One evening, in the midst of a lavish banquet, Xerxes summoned his queen, Vashti. She was to appear before his nobles to display her beauty and grace, but Vashti refused, and that was an act no one had dared before. A queen defying the will of the most powerful man in the world. Xerxes was furious, advisors whispered in his ear, warning that such rebellion, if left unpunished, would spread. And so, with a decree that could not be undone, Vashti was stripped of her title and cast out of the palace. The throne beside Xerxes was now empty, and it would not remain so for long. Across the empire, a decree was sent. The most beautiful young women in Persia were to be gathered and brought to the king's palace. They would undergo months of preparation, beauty treatments, training in royal customs, all for a single purpose, to win the favor of the king and be chosen as queen. Among those taken was a young Jewish girl named Hadassah. But in the palace, she would be known by another name, Esther. She had been raised by her cousin, Mordecai. After the death of her parents, she was an orphan, living humbly with no claim to royalty. But Esther possessed something far greater than beauty, grace, wisdom, and an unseen hand guiding her steps. Mordecai gave her a warning before she entered the palace. Tell no one of your heritage. Keep it a secret. And so, Esther obeyed, not knowing that the very thing she hid would one day define her greatest purpose. Days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and when the time came for Esther to stand before King Xerxes, she did not rely on elaborate riches or grand gestures. She carried herself with quiet dignity, and the king was captivated. From among countless women, Xerxes chose her. And just like that, Esther, the orphan girl, became the queen of the Persian Empire. But as Esther settled into life in the palace, a darkness was growing in the empire. Haman, the king's most powerful official, had risen in favor. His influence was unmatched, his pride unshakable. Yet one man refused to bow before him, Mordecai. Every time Haman walked through the palace gates, all would kneel, but Mordecai stood. Haman was enraged. "How dare this Jew defy me?" he said. And so, what began as personal hatred turned into something far more dangerous. Haman devised a plan, not just to destroy Mordecai, but to wipe out every Jew in the Persian Empire. A decree was issued, sealed with the king's own signet ring. On a chosen day, all Jews, men, women, and children, were to be slaughtered, their belongings taken, their existence erased. Panic spread through the Jewish community. Fear gripped every household. And when Mordecai heard of the decree, he tore his clothes, wept, and sat in ashes. But he knew there was one person who could stand in the gap between death and deliverance. Esther. A message was sent to the queen. Mordecai's words were urgent. "You must go before the king. Beg for our people's lives." But Esther hesitated. It was not that simple. No one, not even the queen, could approach the king uninvited. To step into the throne room unannounced was to risk death, unless the king extended his golden scepter. She had not been summoned for 30 days. What if the king had grown tired of her? What if she was cast aside as quickly as Vashti before her? Mordecai's next words pierced through her fear. "Do not think that because you are in the palace, you will escape. If you remain silent, deliverance will come from another place. But who knows? Perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this." Esther's fear turned to resolve. She sent word back, "Gather all the Jews. Fast for me for 3 days. I will go before the king, and if I perish, I perish." The third day arrived. Dressed in her royal robes, Esther stepped into the king's court. Every breath in the room seemed to hold still. All eyes turned toward her. The king looked up. A moment passed. Then, he extended his golden scepter. Esther was safe, but her mission was not over. Instead of revealing her request immediately, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. One banquet passed, then another. And finally, at the second feast, the moment of truth came. "My king, if I have found favor with you, spare my people. We have been sold to be destroyed." The king was stunned. Who would do such a thing? Esther turned to face him. This man, Haman. The room fell into chaos. The king, furious, stormed out, and when he returned, he found Haman pleading at Esther's feet for his life. But it was too late. Haman was executed that very day. The decree against the Jews was overturned, and in place of destruction came deliverance. The Jews rejoiced. Their mourning turned to celebration. And to this day, the Feast of Purim is observed, a reminder of Esther's bravery and of God's faithfulness. Because of one woman's courage, an entire nation was saved. And her story echoes across time, whispering to all who face impossible choices. Will you stand when fear tells you to be silent? Will you rise when the cost is great? Perhaps, just perhaps, you were born for such a time as this. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between fear and courage? What would you have done in Esther's place? If this story inspired you, don't miss our next one. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful Bible story. Comment below, what lesson do you take from Esther's courage?